here's the thing. If what tends to exacerbate insomnia is you staying in bed, not being able to fall asleep. And so what happens? You get stressed out, you start getting anxiety because you're like, I'm still not falling asleep. You look at the clock, it's already 3 or 4 a.m. You're like, man, I have to get up at 6 or 7 a.m. I don't have much time to fall asleep. So that those thoughts all contribute to the anxiety and the stress. And so your brain starts associating the bed with stress and anxiety the longer
Mm.
you stay in it.
Welcome back to Out of the Box podcast, where Steele and I, Jose, your host, get to talk about outside of the box ideas. This is your first time here in the podcast. We are a podcast that is dedicated to providing amazing ideas that span out from different subjects, from philosophy to science to mathematics. We really like to be explorers of knowledge, and we like to bring in hosts and also share from our own experience. So today we're actually going to be talking about insomnia, and Steele has had some research in that area, being that he's also working with clients. He's had some experience helping some people with that as well. But before we actually get started, I want to invite you guys to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and leave us a comment as well. We really invite you to write a comment. We want to see how what's catching on to the pod for you in the podcast. So without further ado, Steele, if you want to give us a little intro about insomnia, what is it? And then maybe we could lead into how we could solve it, and maybe experiences. Have you ever experienced insomnia?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So an intro and then whether I've experienced it. And real quick, so in terms of what I know about it and where I know where I got that information, um, I uh, I was privileged to be able to actually learn more about insomnia and how to treat insomnia with cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia at the Baylor College of Medicine in Houston. It was a virtual online kind of video call training, and then an online training course with online certification type thing. And it was really cool. I learned so much about, what insomnia is, how to treat it, kind of like what causes it, the risk factors and all that good stuff. So yeah, just give an idea like of where I'm coming from on that. Um, and then I've kind of just studied it on my own. I've also made, I've included in some of my short films, I think too. So what is insomnia? Insomnia is like this sleep disorder where people have a hard time either falling asleep or staying asleep, and that continues for like several months, and with consistent symptoms, that keep happening. And the key thing is they can't fall asleep and they don't feel well rested, and it's interfering with their daily life like work or school and stuff like that. So it's taking
Mm.
a very strong toll on them. And um yeah, I have had insomnia before. I think i had it I had it when I first went to St. Mary's University because I had never had a roommate before. Talamantes. No, Talamantes has been on here before. He was my roommate, and he's been in our podcast talking about math. He's the one who's studying mathematics, and I think just being in the dorm, it was just that dorm. I think because the dorm hall, because the walls are kind of like paper thin, so like people like laughing late at night and stuff like that. I wasn't used to that because I grew up an only child, so I'm used to like being in my own room by myself, quiet. So like it was just a transition thing. So sometimes
Yeah.
I wouldn't fall asleep till like 5 a.m. And then the most recent type of insomnia I had was at UHV in grad school because I just had so much going on. And so I was trying to use Dr. Pepper, like caffeine stuff, to be able to stay on top of all the work and stuff. And I think that's what contributed to the insomnia I had at that time. So
Mhm.
I had a hard time falling asleep for a while, for quite a few months, I would say. And
Yeah, it seems like it's very prevalent nowadays with students in universities, because they are sometimes almost forced to continue studying for several tests, and there's sometimes not enough time, that so they say, for everything, right? So it's almost like a lot of our students even though they need to be sharp in their mind, they have to force themselves to go, have more caffeine and stuff like that, stay up the whole day just so that they can um, provide or produce the amount of work that is required, right?
Yeah, exactly. Have you ever had like insomnia?
I would say, thankfully, I haven't, but sometimes I have had those moments where I could only sleep like 5 hours or 3 hours, and then I would have to wake up because I just couldn't fall back into sleep. But it happens rarely, very rarely. But yes, my body sometimes, like when it's New Year's or when it's uh I don't know, holidays where we have to go to sleep really late because of like family, just a reunion. Sometimes it does, yeah, it does like kind of reset my sleep cycle, and it makes me just not be able to fall asleep the next day. Just feels different, and my body just kind of wakes up naturally or like
Yeah,
abnormally just because has had that reset button kind of deal.
exactly. And that reminds me of what we were talking about before this. So two things like so insomnia, like people think, oh, I have insomnia. It's kind of like a common thing, like we talked about before on depression. Like people will say, well, I have depression, It's like, yeah, you might feel sad, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have like the full blown clinical depression. Just like I don't think, and maybe I could be wrong. I haven't looked at it in detail, but I don't know if I've ever had like clinical insomnia. Like we all have periods, and the reason why this is important is because people can stress out about that, like, oh no, I'm starting to have insomnia. I'm in big trouble. But it's like it's normal to have, and that's what I learned in the training. It's normal to have a bad night every now and again. Like if it's
Mm.
happening every now and again, that's normal. Like that's actually, yeah, it's just common, Like some nights you're just stressed out or you don't get to sleep until real late because of an event or something, or the day just doesn't go right. It could be all sorts of reasons. So it's only if it's like every day for like several months and certain criteria met that it's full blown clinical insomnia, and then that's when treatment, might be considered, if especially if it's distressing you out. But and then the other thing is,
And do you think and this might be a topic for another day, but I'm just thinking of like if students were to get to sleep and go to sleep at the right time, you think they'll be able to produce the same amount of work and not have insomnia? Because
uh,
you know how they I think I can't remember, some country in Europe now they have a 3-day weekend instead of a 2-day weekend. And so that gives the body a lot more time to rest and kind of recuperate. So do you think that maybe adding an extra day of rest where people can like reset, can come back, does that could that lead to more productivity? Because supposedly like that's kind of what some companies in the country found, that they actually did uh, produce the same amount of work or even more when they had more rest. So it's kind of ironic. It's kind of weird that that happens. You would think like, oh no, if you have another day of work, you'll produce more work. But it's like, no, when you have one more day of rest, you produce more work.
yeah, I would say it could be possible. I'd have to look more into it, but it could be possible. I think if we all have healthy sleep, and we're well rested, and we're not tired and fatigued throughout the day, then certainly it seems that we could produce more work, and especially if, because with insomnia and not getting enough rest and feeling tired throughout the week, I mean, I would
That
say,
kind of eats up like the next day,
yeah, it
right?
makes
And
you go
then
slower.
that day eats up the next day, and it's just kind of like a continuous cycle
Yeah,
of
and
insomnia.
I think it's like it makes you go slower, so it decreases work productivity. So
Fogs your ability to compute.
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. And so the other part I was gonna mention is like how you were talking about like the weekend, right? And we were talking about the weekend, how a lot of people, it's very common to sleep in on the weekend and then get up early Monday the next day. So like if you slept in on Sunday till like 9 or 10 a.m. and then Monday you got to get up at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. to go to work or school. Well, if you do that every single week and you think about it, like you're doing it every single week, you're resetting your sleep cycle, you're resetting your brain, and the way it's used to getting up. And that's happening like a lot. So it's like when you think about it like that, you start realizing, wow, I'm really putting my brain through a quite a time every week doing that. And so that's why one of the treatments for insomnia and sleep hygiene in general that's good for everyone is to go to sleep at the same time and to wake up at the same time, because then you're not constantly, bombarding your brain with a new wake up time and sleep time. It's like you want to have consistency in that so your brain can get used to it and not have that sudden shift every week, because sometimes it can lead to insomnia or sleep problems, or other people it might just make them feel tired on Monday and Tuesday till their sleep cycle kind of gets back into the week cycle. So yeah, that's another thing.
So let's say, for example, somebody is struggling with insomnia right now and they want to kind of fix it, but their schedule just kind of changes, right? One day they go finish work at 10, another day they finish at 6 p.m. and then it's just like constantly changing throughout the week. Is there a way that they could still manage to overcome that insomnia?
Yeah, so that's actually where a lot of shift work sleep disorders can come from, is people who do a lot of shift work at night and they have to sleep during the day, or it changes from week to week. That's
Mm-hmm.
why it's quite common for people in those job positions to develop the shift work sleep disorder. Just for that reason, you're not getting a consistent sleep schedule. So the brain's constantly having to reset the circadian rhythm and the sleep cycle.
Yeah.
And the
So
circadian rhythm, so there might be a way actually, because the circadian rhythm depends on light coming in, to the eyes, and the brain registers it a certain way. And that's what sets the biological clock of our body and of sleep. Um, so there's these things called sleep light boxes, I think, and it's like a thing like this that lights up and it's really bright. And then they have advanced ones and stuff. You can buy them on Amazon. And so people will put them on their desk, I think at work or during the day when they're not sleeping. And so that light stimulus goes in and then keeps their circadian rhythm in the right place. And so I would say people who have shift work at night or they have to work at night and then they have to sleep during the day. Well, if they have to sleep during the day, they have to block out as much light as possible because, like I said, that circadian rhythm depends on the light to wake up and then the dark to sleep. And that ties in with the melatonin and stuff too.
hmm yeah, if you're not, if the body's not perceiving that it's already night, the melatonin does not kick in, and so therefore you stay awake, right?
Exactly. So melatonin supplements might be another option too, just to get that going. But then again, I've heard stuff, and I haven't looked at experiments or research on this, but I have heard cases where people become too dependent on melatonin,
hmm
brain stops producing it as much. Just like
or
with
or maybe it just doesn't work anymore, like
yeah,
at a
and so then,
certain.
yeah, it doesn't work anymore. And then so now they can't sleep, and even melatonin doesn't work anymore because yeah. So,
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty intense. um is there any other way that somebody could develop a good sleep cycle or come back from insomnia, other than just like setting up? I mean, I think one of the essentials is waking up or going to sleep at the same time, waking up at the same time. It's kind of keeping that regular rhythm, right?
exactly. Yeah, there's other sleep hygiene stuff and that can be found online. So it's like you want to decrease your body temperature at night because that's what's supposed to happen to help you fall asleep. It naturally lowers. So if you're doing exercises late at night or late in the evening, that's gonna raise your body temperature and make it harder to fall asleep. So it's better to do exercise early on. Same with eating. If you eat like a large meal right before bed, you're gonna have indigestion, acid reflux if you have that, and other problems that are gonna keep you awake. Drinking alcohol late at night, even though it's like the most common thing ever, right? That can also lead to some problems, and so can caffeine and stimulants. So like caffeine, because the thing with caffeine, it has such a long half life. I think it's, and I'm just going off memory. I could be wrong. I think it's like 5 or 8 hours. After you stop drinking it, it's still in your system and still kind of working and slowly depleting from your body. So drinking caffeine after like 12 or 1 may not be the best thing because it's still gonna be in your system for quite a while, depending on when you go to bed. Also, so like in terms of body temperature, you can also make your room cold, not like freezing cold where it's uncomfortable, but cool temperature. And nice mattress. If it's hard or uncomfortable, that's going to play a role in hard to fall asleep. So there's those things. There's other ones I can't remember off the top of my head, but the most important thing, the most important first line treatment for insomnia that I've heard about and trained in is called stimulus control. And it's the idea that it takes you 15 or 20 minutes to fall asleep and you're still not falling asleep. You leave the bed and you go into another room, ideally, or just leave the bed. The best thing though is to leave your bedroom because uh, here's the thing. If what tends to exacerbate insomnia is you staying in bed, not being able to fall asleep. And so what happens? You get stressed out, you start getting anxiety because you're like, I'm still not falling asleep. You look at the clock, it's already 3 or 4 a.m. You're like, man, I have to get up at 6 or 7 a.m. I don't have much time to fall asleep. So that those thoughts all contribute to the anxiety and the stress. And so your brain starts associating the bed with stress and anxiety the longer
Mm,
you stay in it. So the idea with stimulus control is you leave the bed to break the association between stress, anxiety, and the bed and the bedroom and sleep. Because if you associate anxiety with being in your bed and in your bedroom, you start associating with sleep. And so the idea is you break that by leaving the bedroom whenever you can't fall asleep in 15 or 20 minutes. You go sit in a recliner, do something relaxing, something that's not stimulating. So watch a boring TV show, listen to music, meditate, read a book that's not too stimulating until you feel tired. And then whenever you feel tired, like you're about to fall asleep, then you go back in the bed and you repeat that cycle until you eventually fall asleep. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And I've also heard, I think we're so like to the point of you saying that we're stimulated by light. I think one of the most um, common things nowadays is before going to sleep, just looking at your phone, just kind of like checking up social media, seeing who texted, seeing what happened. And I've noticed honestly, whenever I eat at 7 and then I go to sleep around 10, 11, and I just read a book instead of using my screen. I've noticed that I just tend to have a better sleep that day. And it's just it's almost like if you want to like grow muscle and like build up, there's certain things that you have to do. Well, if you want better sleep, there's certain things that you have to do. The body is just like naturally created in that way, right?
yeah.
And through science and through investigation, we've been able to discover that these are the best habits for sleeping.
And why do you think? Do you know about like the why the phone screen at night keeps people awake and causes problems?
I mean, I think it said that it releases blue light, which is something similar to what's associated with the sun, right? And so that's kind of going into one's eyes. I mean, other than the fact that you're consuming information, so you're adding information to your brain at the end of the day, which is making your brain waves continue to work at a certain level, right? Your brain is continuing to work at a beta state level. And so if you never slow down your brain to just digest and just start like breaking down, not breaking down, but slowing down, because our brains work at a certain wave frequency. And so whenever we're like, for example, right now we're probably at a beta state, beta wave level. We're thinking, we're rationalizing, but whenever we start actually reading, it starts going into a slower beta wave level, right? We're still receiving information, but it's slower. Um, but and then after that, we get into alpha states is when people say like they're meditating and stuff like that. So that's when the sleep cycle starts slow, like your brain waves start slowing down. Um, and so when we're looking at social media, there's so many triggers that just cause emotional reactions in us, right? Oh, we see this. Oh, we see that. There's a war. There's this. It's almost like watching news. Like I know we talked about this before, like watching news at the end of the day. well, if we're just watching tragic stuff happen, at the end of the day, well, like that triggers the brain to like set up in flight or fight mode, right? um and so I think even if it's something funny or like stuff about family and that sort of thing, I think it's still at that point the blue light that's affecting, right? It's
Yeah,
causing you
blue
to
light.
just like stay awake and not fall asleep. And so I've noticed whenever I've watched a movie on my phone at night or something like that, my body like starts feeling like sleepy at around 9, 10, 11. But then once I pass that time frame, my body just like stays awake
Yeah, it's like
because
also
of the
losing
blue light.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
energy. I noticed that too, like whenever I was having insomnia pretty bad, I noticed that whenever I wouldn't be able to fall asleep past, I would say around 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., it's like all of a sudden the tiredness went away. And then I just had this energy. And then that energy drove these racing thoughts at night. And then that just did not be, it's like I couldn't stop thinking. I couldn't turn my brain off. Like it kept wanting to think about what are you going to do the next day? What's your plan for this? Oh, you still have to figure this out. There's this problem to solve. You, oh, what is this philosophy? Let's get into existentialism and let's think about physics and God and all this stuff. And it just
Yeah.
keeps going and going. And I'm like, God, I'm trying to fall asleep, just turn off and I can't turn it off. Or like we talked about before, how we both had our brain trying to solve math problems while we're trying to
Yeah, dude, I that's crazy that you had that too. Cause
yeah,
yeah, I remember.
yeah. So there you go. So like it's weird how the brain it's like after you don't fall asleep by a certain time, the energy increases. You'd think it'd be the opposite.
Yeah. And what did people say that it's the best time to fall asleep? Because I know that there's like a time from between I've heard that there's a time from between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. where that's like the time frame naturally where your body can receive the most rest during that time. Once you pass that time frame after 2 p.m., the rest, time that you sleep from then on is just like it's still good, but it's not the best sleep.
Yeah. I actually don't know, but it seems like it's based on my experience, anecdotally, yeah, it seems like for me at least, if I stay up past 2, it's gonna be hard to fall asleep. If I go to bed around 9 or 10 or even close to 11, then I'm tired. I'm still kind of in that tired state of I feel like I can fall asleep. But once it passes a certain point, it's really hard. So, but I'm sure there's like studies on that, yeah, on Google or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've researched it before, just like whenever I was researching like morning routines and night routines, a lot of people say, cut off any like blue light. That's why at
Yeah.
most nightstands they have a light, but it's like an orange light,
Yeah, they have it on
and
purpose.
that has less blue light, which actually helps you start falling asleep, right?
Yeah,
Because the blue light is what causes you to kind of wake up.
exactly, exactly.
And then they also mention like going to sleep around like 9 or 10, um and keeping that as a cycle. But because from I think it has to do something with the circadian rhythm, where from 10 to 2 p.m. is when it's like that little time frame when your body just absorbs the most from the sleep.
Mm,
And I think it makes sense what you said about not eating too late, because when one eats too late, the body is still processing food, and so it's taking energy to consume that food. And so what is it's almost like uh putting your phone to charge while still using it, right? And so once it's done charging all the way, then it could start uh charging up the body and all the other things that it needs to fix throughout the night. And so if we consume food really late, the body, whenever we fall asleep, is using energy to consume that food. Once it's done consuming that food, then it has time to start giving you rest, if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah. It's like increasing your energy while digesting. I think that's just your body's doing a lot of stuff while digesting the food, so that kind of keeps you awake because your body's still doing things. When you want to sleep, you want your body to not be doing too much other
Yeah.
stuff other than resting and
Yeah,
relaxing.
you just want to focus it on resting on yourself.
And the
Yeah.
there's like relaxing techniques to help people fall asleep with insomnia, like meditation, mindfulness, focusing on the here and now instead of the future or the past, which can keep people awake if they focus on those two things. Deep breathing, deep muscle relaxation, where you focus on one muscle group starting from the toes and all going all the way up to the top of your head at a time. And it's so cool because YouTube has all these videos for that kind of stuff. They have guided meditations, guided progressive muscle relaxation that can help you guide you through with a calming voice and music and stuff. And there's also binaural beats, which I think there needs to be more research on that because it's unfortunate that we still don't really know the efficacy of binaural beats. For me, they've worked, but that doesn't mean anything from a scientific point of view. So
Yeah.
I really
So
would,
I mean, like white noise, right? Like,
yeah,
well, one of the things that I remember when I was a baby, my mom would put this heartbeat
oh,
music whenever I was falling asleep. And I think she did that because the idea was that whenever you're in the womb of your mother, you have this constant noise of like the heart, beating blood into the whole body. So you're constantly hearing like this inner, it's almost like when they do the sonogram, and you could hear, the movement inside. Well, it's the same kind of noise, but in a recording. And so they put that recording, and I would just hear that, I guess, when I was just little. And I don't know, but I'm really good at falling asleep even when there's noise now. I
oh, you
just,
got used to it.
especially when I hear a fan constantly like
Yeah, I was gonna
just going round and round and round, I
mention,
just kind of makes it more uh like cyclical, and I could just hear that. Like it's not anything new. It's not like it's making
yeah,
different sounds. It's just one constant sound.
and that's why it works because what happens is that's why a lot of people like to use box fans or standing fans or noise stuff like you mentioned when they're trying to fall asleep, and it helps them fall asleep because the brain is less likely to react to external noises outside the room or something like that when there's a constant consistent sound going on, because when that constant consistent sound is happening, the brain gets used to it, and so it's less disturbed by other noises outside that sound because it's kind of focused on it for so long, I think. Because I was reading something like that, and so people are less likely to wake up or be disturbed by noises outside the room when they have like a fan because it's a constant noise.
Yeah,
That makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, man. Is there any last thoughts that you have in regards to insomnia?
Yeah, there's other stuff too. So if you find yourself worrying a lot at night and that's what's causing you to not be able to fall asleep or in the middle or the beginning, or racing thoughts, anxiety thoughts, stressful thoughts. A technique to do for that is to, during the day, schedule a specific time and stick to it to write down all of the things that are worrying you and stressing you out. The idea is that you do that during the day and you get your brain, it's like the stimulus control. You train your brain to not do that in the bedroom when you're trying to fall asleep. And you're training your brain to schedule all of those worried thoughts during the day instead of at night. So the idea is that if you write those thoughts down during the day and you problem solve them, even you could do that too during the day, then you're less likely, your brain is less likely to do that at night when you're trying to fall asleep. You can also
Yeah,
do cognitive behavioral therapy, kind of like challenging those thoughts too with anxiety. That might help.
yeah.
Um,
Even having, what I do sometimes, I have sticky notes right next to my bed, and whenever I'm thinking about something, or I remember something like, oh, I need to do this tomorrow, I'll just write it down in the sticky note. That way I'm not in my head thinking like, oh, what if I forget, what if I don't do this, what if I, and so I have it written down. I don't think about it anymore. And
yeah,
so I just know that when I wake up, like I have those to-do lists that I have to do. or even if it's possible, like you said, maybe having a scheduled time before going to sleep, write down everything that you need to do for the next day or anything that's worrying you. I think that's why like a lot of people journal, because once they journal and they have it down on paper, it's harder to keep running it through your head
Yeah,
and
it's
keep
like head down
brainstorming and saying like, hey, how am I going to do this? How is this going to work out? But if you have it written down and it's like on paper and you can visually see it, it's almost like you detach yourself from the matter, and like you have it on paper, and so it's now outside of you, not within you, continually running through. And
exactly.
so yeah, I think, I mean,
Yeah, you get it off your chest, you get it off your head. You're taking those thoughts and
mm,
you're extracting them out and putting them on paper so you don't have to deal with them anymore. Kind of. Yeah,
dang, it's wow, it has must have some psychological aspect to it, like kind of removing it out of your mind into paper.
yeah,
um it's almost like uh it sounds almost like the creative, like, aspect of things. Like whenever we have something and we just write it down, it's like you thought about it, but now it's on paper, now it's physically here,
yeah. You're
like
manifesting it in the real world, and
manifesting it in the real world. Yeah.
yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah, that might have some association with it. But thank you guys for watching till the end of this video. We really appreciate your time. What was interesting about the topic today? Do you experience insomnia in your life? Please let us know down below. We really like to help you out or talk to you as well. And if you like this video, please also think about subscribing. We really highly encourage that, because we're continuously putting out new content every week, and we don't want you to miss out on any of the new content that we produce. So until next time, we will see you soon. Take care.